Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. We're here today with an old, friend of mine who I've followed for a long time now. We've been communicating, but we haven't got around to doing this. So I'm glad that we're finally here. That's Francis Hunt. He goes by many different hats: the crypto sniper, the market sniper, and the reset sniper, covering a whole range of things. There's a lot of overlap in what we cover, and there's a few things that we differ on. So I can't wait to dive into it all today. I know there's some mutual fans of Francis, and we might even end up sharing this on both our channels. But thanks so much for joining us today, Francis.
Absolute pleasure. And also, I've been very keen to engage with yourself. Got some awesome Australian members that are live, active, and buzzing on our community as well. And I send them your way too for the nice breadth that you cover. So, really glad we did this.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that you really nailed as well, particularly, was shorting the altcoins in crypto winter. And I'm always like a bit of a perma bull there. So that was probably something where I even learnt and wanted to improve myself from learning from you. So we might get into all that. But I guess something that you've had this big theory on was this big grand reset. And I think when I went down the rabbit hole, there's this tendency to think, the markets are going to crash and burn, silver's going to go to the moon, and there's plenty of people out there telling you that and trying to sell you the silver and the gold and that type of thing as well. But then I sort of went full circle a little bit in terms of, oh, well, this QE is going to prop up markets and stocks are going to go higher, and I don't want to live in fear and just stock food and bullets and gold and silver. But this year, I think I went back a little bit in terms of look how quickly things changed. Look how quickly gold and silver exploded. Markets tanked. If they didn't print trillions, maybe they would have crashed and burned. And there were places where supermarket shelves were empty for a time. So maybe talk us through your sort of reset and your general theory on everything.
Yeah. Well, with the three brands, as you mentioned, thank you for that. The crypto being the future for which we're the early adopters and we're getting a peek into tomorrow. The market sniper being the technical analysis on the traditional markets that are seriously in trouble. And the reset being the overall aspect that this is an unsustainable shell game that is coming to, a bitter end, and for which the CV19 represents quite an intense and aggressive escalation for me in terms of the economic outcomes of what's going to happen and how they intend to play it. And in some senses, I do get what other people will call conspiratorial in terms of the degree of authenticity behind the necessity of certain aspects. I won't take you too far down there unless you ask to dip deeper, but essentially these three things all overlap. So it's not just, and I find by being what I consider as a global macro, we love crypto and we're actively engaged in crypto. But, probably our most significant call this year was in Acapulco when we said short oil to single digits. This is an understanding of all the levers of a much bigger machine. It's like an extremely complex multi-cylinder engine burning diesel, petrol with fans and everything. This is our global economy with tweaks, screws and bolts that need to be. You have to try and understand the overall flows. And it all rolls through into crypto. Crypto's tended to think it's the segregated universe, but unfortunately there's one communal fact, and that is the people that are engaged in it.
Absolutely.
And that's why on CV19 we also had such a Bitcoin vicious sell-off, because the same speculators that were punting really big on the NASDAQ and buying the damn dip and all of that nonsense were getting liquidated and needed liquidity. And the easy, fast liquidity is the first to go when you get people that are panicked and in a breakdown situation. So you really do need to know a little bit more. In fact, like right now, for ref the gold and silver, which is the old world money, we hit really core targets. But the key thing is the technical analyst and the analysis and the HVF method, the Hunt Volatility Funnel method, was telling us we've got a weekly pattern structures. This we gave on live stream, even for free in our YouTube, at Euro and GBP targets. Those had all just recently been met. And you had tiny, small little fractalized patterns that squeaked it a little bit further, and then we rolled over. And so people could have even been prepared and taken off on their hot pot, their medium pot, and taxed down from their high leverage, their medium leverage into their investment account, which is kind of a little bit of the doctrine we encourage people to have. You've got to have multiple time frame, and you've got to have, when it involves leverage, timing becomes far more significant. So you've got to have your super on it, you're on the screens and it's about to happen right now, or you've got a pending order and it'll be triggered and you have high probability. Then you can have a high leverage pot. You have moderate leverage that you're holding a trade for a long term, but it's not gun to your head risky. And then you have your investment. And most people, when they come looking for trading, are a bit light on the blue pot, which is the investment one. We want the fast track to the money. We kind of want to buy the capstone to the pyramid without having the middle layer and the lower layer. So slowly we help people backward integrate the slow dough, because the slow dough is the sustainable stay-at-home dough. It doesn't leave you as fast as your hot pot profits do. So there's a whole philosophy about how you should work through, and that's training, and that's kind of my world. And I've made all the errors. Many people want to put themselves forward as gurus. I'm the anti-guru. I've actually cocked everything up that's possibly able to cock up, and I've got going on 36 years of trading. So there was a funny hurdler. I think there was a skier in Britain called Eddie the Eagle, they called him. He was the worst skier in the Olympics, trying to do the ski jump. Yep. And I like to paraphrase myself as the Eddie the Eagle of trading. I remember watching a guy in the Olympics do 110-meter hurdles, and he knocked every single one down. He just got off on the wrong foot, and he smacked them all down. I've done them all, and I've smacked him, not once, but twice. And that makes it very, very useful, because I actually can relate to people that bump their heads, people that just look like they genetically extremely talented and gurus and have never slipped on a banana skin. I actually think that's a bad pitch. We can help people, and I've had to establish process and method to actually manage around my own weaknesses, emotionality, psychological, all of these elements. So that's kind of, if you would want a sort of nutshell explanation of my worldview. We've got these three things that are going down. They overlap. The sweet spot, you want to be in the middle. By understanding resets, I know that oil is being moved across. That's why you'll see me tweet about Greta. It looks all socio-political and boring. I'm not here for your political commentary. I'm here for the charts and the technical. And then you find out, no, but the Rockefellers moved out of oil in a big, big way. They're going to turn on it. And then we have the technical structures. We say now's when you need to be short. So we build a bias fundamentally to it. And then we wait for the technical setup, and we have the big time frames, the small time frames, when to use super high leverage so that you can accelerate your accounts, but then what to do it if you happen to be fortunate enough to make it. Don't sit there and think you're a legend. You got one trade right at a key moment. You need to tax it down into the cold storage almost. If you're thinking of the crypto guys, because you have a lot of cryptos, it's kind of like get some of those fast gains, put in the cold storage. That cools it down and it banks it. In a way. So it's that trickle down structure that we bring in. And I think this is a polarizing, Alex, this is such a polarizing event that we're coming up to. People are going to be busted, or they're going to come out flying. What kind of quality slave do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that cleans the toilets, or do you want to be one of the wealthy ones that still has lots of freedom of movement, can get around, etc.? Unfortunately, money and wealth does that. I'm not money obsessed, I'm freedom obsessed. Yeah. I want to be able to come and go and move. And let me tell you, having means makes a world of difference. Having tools, even if someday we have to deal in the black market because the Bolsheviks are clamping down so hard, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how many gold ounces, how many Bitcoin valuations do you have? Most things can be bought. And this is the element. Be well resourced for these times.
Well, yeah, I think you've gone over a lot already, and it's very similar. So people come charging in and want to know what the hottest ICO is, and our message is sort of like, dollar cost average your way into gold, silver, and Bitcoin, and learn those ropes before you go getting too funky. And even if you don't become a trader, learn how to understand the charts. That's going to help your high time frame decision making. And things like oil that you've touched on, that's really interesting, because I think we've seen almost climate change was getting ready for the central banks were putting out papers about how they needed to save us from climate change. And in Australia, we had the fires. And then all of a sudden that got swept under the rug, and it was almost like, oh, beauty, we've got a better excuse now from why central banks need to print trillions a week to save everyone. So I've got no doubt that this is being the excuse, and they extended it from 2008. Where do you fall on that scale in terms of, surely these academics are not as dumb as they almost make out to be? Like, if we can sit here and understand that you can't have this debt-based model, mathematically it doesn't work, they're going to raise interest rates to 3% with 26 trillion of debt. Like, that's never going to happen. So do you think that their mission is jawboning and confidence and trying to keep people in the 9-to-5 job and happy and watching Kim Kardashian at night? Or what do you think they are saying behind closed doors?
To me, they're running a scam. There's those that have no idea and are just useful idiots in the pyramid structure, and those that clearly understand this doesn't end well. And part of it is, keep the don't stampede the herd. So there's sort of calmness. We've got this covered. I always laugh when the Fed and all these various central banks say, and we've got many tools, and it's almost like you open up this box and there's all these scalpels, surgery items, little hammers and things they've got. They haven't. They have no monetary policy because they can't increase rates in any degree of significancy. They're painted in a corner due to the levels of debt. Everybody goes this, and that. The biggest story about this is that this is a debt-based bubble, and it is a fiat proliferation-based game. And many people will say, well, why aren't we seeing the inflation? Well, inflation is not happening because the velocity of money is exceedingly low. And why is the velocity of money very low? Because until now, they've largely given it to big institutions, particularly the GFC, as you referred to plug holes in their balance sheets. That's not flowing into the economy. That's using 500 euro notes to glue the hole in the damn wall. What ends up, wait till they start. There's a big push now because the Bolsheviks are very much getting the upper hand in America and various other places from various social economic agendas that we've seen coming around. And this is why having an eye on the political also helps give me a heads up. They've started to make payments, and I think this is gatewaying into UBI, these furloughing payments to the equivalent of SMEs and all of that in America, $600 here, $1,200, whatever the case may be. That's run out. They're going to redo it. They are actually interiming step that future UBI for businesses that they've destroyed via overreaction to a flu season. In my take, without getting into the biological, I'm not qualified to comment, but that's my take. So what is actually happening is they're interiming dependency on their citizenry. So it's going to be a peasantry and then a ruling class. And that's a hollowing out event for the middle, very, very much so. And 90% of the middle goes down. Might be slightly wealthier peasants, but generally they go down. And that's the shell game, because if you're dealing in Australian dollars, you're dealing in rands, you're dealing in USD, they're going to proliferate on a scale. We did 5 trillion in 3 months. Let's not forget that. In swap lines. Do you think any of that's going to get paid back? Do you think Turkey or South Africa are really going to pay back? They're not selling enough goods to America. Listen, it's kind of like the guy's decided to burn his business down and claim the insurance, and the staff are all stealing the stock. It's fine, guys, just take it. He kind of looks the other way and lets it happen and is grabbing some of the best items himself. That's where we are at in terms of the analogy for this. So the point is not to be in the currencies. The currencies is not a measure of wealth. You have to just entirely rejig how you see yourself. Even if I say something like, silver could be a 4-digit value or a triple-digit value, don't see it as silver going up. It's just the proliferation that's going to happen. When the money ceases, the Bolsheviks see some of that UBI money. I'm calling it UBI already because as far as I'm concerned, it's here. It's an interim step. Starts going direct to the citizen instead of going direct. Those people need to eat. Those people are going to have to buy something. They're not going to be making investments like the billionaires who just put it in their stock portfolio and there's no economic churn with the money and velocity. Those people at the bottom end start getting money. Then you're going to see your inflation. And boy, are you going to see it.
That's
definitely... I mean, even if we take silver, silver's gone up from $11.75 at the bottom of the CV19. Despite the pullback that we've had today, you're still seeing it trading above $25. Think of everything that has silver. You're going to start to see that inflation. And that's being brought about loss of faith in fiat. So as the fiat system loses its faith, all things that are alternatives that can't be printed are going to go up. Some of those have industrial inputs into various things. There's inflation actually everywhere. And that's another reason why I did a recent vid where I took the shadow stats and I said, where's gold really if we deflate for the amount of proliferation according to Reagan's 1982 inflation era? Yes. So those are some of the things you need to do. There's a very complex game of devaluation. We're all monkeys on greased poles. You just stop and have a rest and you're skidding all the way back down because the measure you're on is a greased pole and you want to get onto firm ground.
I've got a theory, Francis, and I know you would have thought about all aspects of this. So I'm interested to hear what you think. So I'm calling this the digital thickshake theory, and it's a bit of a play on the US dollar milkshake theory, where everyone's got these swap lines, and the US dollar's going to get so strong because we're so dependent on it. I think the crypto world has introduced a new shell into the shell game, as you say, and the central banks have had this power for so long to use their tools or create money, as they say. But I don't think governments have ever really realized that they can spend into existence. And now we're talking about modern monetary theory. So maybe Trump's going to get a little bit more power. He's going to love that. But we've also got the commercial banks and the lending. And as you say, they've got all these reserves, but they haven't really lent out. If anything, they've sort of speculated and given it to their friends, and they've got wealthier. They've benefited from the bailout. So there's sort of three entities there that can create money, and none of them really want to lose power from the other. But now they're starting to talk about these central bank digital currencies, or in China, it's the government that are going to create that currency. It's JP Morgan, and now it's Goldman Sachs. So the commercial banks want to create their own money. So I think that is going to change things, because whoever creates it, if it's the Fed, they can force people to download Fed app and use FedCoin, and they're bypassing the government, bypassing commercial banks. That gets you to your inflation, like you were touching on. But now we have this fourth shell, which is crypto, digital representations of gold and silver, all the metals themselves. There's this other ecosystem that people can sort of vote and say, well, I'm not going to participate in your system and be deflated and stealth taxed. We're going to go into this thing that's scarce. And so you don't need these rails and these straws and trying to suck out of the US or whatever. There's this new digital world where money's just going between anyone in Africa and Russia that has a smartphone. Say goodbye to the banking system. There's these new payment rails. So I'd love to get your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, very good comments. And again, I'll start with the one very key statement that I'll make more than once. They, when I say they, think a control structure, and this is unfortunately a global thing, because multinational governments actually cooperate in terms of herd management. And I hate the use of that word herd, and we're seeing it with herd immunity and all of this. You are livestock in name, almost, never mind in how you're treated. And they'll be coming to tag us soon, I'm pretty sure. But with reference to your question, they will never let you have your own money. The source of their control and power is that they control the issuance of money. That means 99.9% of the people are running around trying to earn tokens, pieces of paper, digits in a computer, whatever mechanism the technology facilitates, but the control of the issuance thereof is held by the force. So people that evangelize about we've escaped, and you can mention all the big old money family names that so many people refer in conspiracy theories regarding central banking by crypto. I say, think again.
So I think I've heard you say, are you of the opinion that Bitcoin has been created by them or the establishment, or that they're just going to take over control of it through making it sort of connected and independent with the on-ramps with the banks, or they're going to buy up a lot of Bitcoin, or how are they going to control it in your mind?
I always say to people, don't focus on the drama, the narrative, and the soap opera. Focus on whether it's owned, and then you know who's going to be controlling it, and then who it's going. Who initiated it? I don't buy the fairy tale of this altruistic Satoshi Nakamoto story. On balance of probability, it's smelly, but I could absolutely be wrong, and I don't think it's going to affect the quality of decisions I'll be making as to whether it was a privateer that was completely benevolent, disappeared into the ether after he created it, still has this huge wallet of wealth. It's kind of Santa Claus for adults and Tooth Fairy. For me personally, it doesn't look like normal human behavior. In 1996, the NSA had done quite a elaborate spec for something that very much emulates Bitcoin. So I've looked into that.
Yes.
Variety of other things. So remember, control structures it's a lizard. I'll use David Icke's favorite terms. They can cut off their tail to have you fascinating about a twitching limb that has no heart and has no life whilst growing anew elsewhere. So they can quite happily, because the banking system, you mentioned the government banking, that's all part of the control structure arc. It's all lizard. But they can sacrifice commercial banks as we know it, which is one part of the control structure, which is the intermediary that flows from the central banks into the herd or peasants, they can sacrifice that like the lizard's tail left to twitch because they've grown a new limb and they have control over blockchain. Don't forget, Bitcoin's not private at all. Now anybody in the world can check how much BTC any particular wallet has received over a period of time frame, which is why I'm actually don't think it's good quality, as good a quality money as people think. And I'd mention Monero and other privacy coins, because if I get paid by one generation removed from a hired hitman who shot somebody, that money is apparently tarnished money and is not the same fungibility value of a legitimately paid one where the government scraped their tax and Joe Schmo has sold his pizza restaurant.
A couple of things I'd add there just quickly. So Ethereum is well on the way to making itself more private, and I hope that Bitcoin will as well in the next 12 to 24 months. That is going to be a hotly debated thing, particularly if we have a Bitcoin ETF or whatever, because that means the hard fork, everyone has to go down that path, and regulators are going to say no, no, no. So that could be another chain split opportunity. But just today we had more Aussie exchanges delist the privacy coins, and even some of the OTC brokers now won't sell you Monero. So it's really interesting where that's all going. And
those are the ones you want. The ones they don't want are the ones you should want.
Yes.
And let me say, the ones where they say, oh no, now it's private now, like WhatsApp does, they're sort of supposedly, what do they call it again?
End-to-end encryption or whatever.
You scramble the phrases. That's because they know they already have what you're typing in device prior to it even being sent. They will never give you full privacy. What they'll give you is deception privacy, where they get what they want and they give you the false illusion that you've got what you need and what you want. So anything that is deemed a problem by the control structures, probably causing them legitimate issues to easily break open. So one of the key things on privacy is that they are actively killing freedom of speech and privacy right now. And the notions of any shelter is one they don't want to tolerate. And this is an escalation of dominance. And I call it the technological Bolshevism that is closing down and around us. And you only have to see the freedom of speech, the banning on Twitter, YouTube, et cetera, to understand that actually at a control structure level, they're absolutely ruthless.
Have you seen in Australia the journalists that have been getting their doors banged down? And these guys are just reporting on ABC. Like, it's nothing too bad at all. And this is Australia. Like, they're trying to ban encryption here.
I'm really sad for the memes I'm hearing in Australia, because I've got a nice bunch of real up for it Aussie guys that are very interactive and on the boards, and I mean they're retweeting and telling me stuff, and I'm like saying, man, I think you're at the cutting edge of slam down on freedom of speech and privacy. You're probably worse than any other state. South Africa was really poor. They were really strict on the CV19 as well, but I don't think they have the same means. You have the UK, where there's, London's the only Western nation that's probably the most surveilled in the top 10 of primarily Chinese nations. Social scoring is coming. All of this is coming. This is proper herd management.
Well, yeah,
it's funny that we get this kind of language. I listen to language. When I talk about trading, I'm very specific, and I focus on accuracy. Accuracy is the precursor to someone that is really seeking actual hard truth. So I even encourage my traders not to say certain phrases or to make a joke of themselves being a counter indicator when they get a trade wrong or anything. Your subconscious mind doesn't understand things, and it's very specific with language. I don't use the word believe at all, because you can't be rationalized out of something that you're injected with, because belief systems are typically given to you when you're impressionable and young, and most of them need challenging. And the older I get, the more things I'm unwinding rather that I was given than new things I'm binding up.
I think I don't want to go off on a big tangent, but I definitely think that's where the world of and the realm of psychedelics is coming back into the conversation. A lot of rewiring our thought processes, and I call it the snowfield, where we've had the tracks worn out, and there's the psychedelics in a lot of ways for people with PTSD, whatever. It's a fresh coat of snow to build new tracks and undo a lot of that programming, unlock creativity. And I think that's where we're sort of going to look back in a generation and think, what were we doing with some of the drugs we're using versus some of the drugs that were illegal? But I don't know how much you want to go down that rabbit hole.
No, it's interesting what you say. And I mean, as a young dad, and congratulations for your burgeoning family, you'll know that you start with milk teeth and your wee one has his milk teeth, but that when you're done with grabbing hold of booby, you actually, those things bail for your long termers. And in the same way, in mindset, you have to give a protection set of mechanisms for a child to exist and to have days to look forward to, etc., for their mindset that carries them through childhood, where you just don't want them to get, anything ill happen to them, put any, poisonous berry in their mouth, etc. Post that, it's almost like they need a wipe. A wipe of belief systems, not of memories and childhood memories, but a wipe of belief system, and say, now pursue facts, look at all facts, and actually understanding the history of our world is always one of domination. It's just more subtle and smart. Yeah, the notion that whoever arrived in, let's just say, South Africa, because I'm familiar with the history, and found peaceful tribes there. The Zulus were fighting and killing the Bushmen. The Khoisan were being eliminated by the Xhosas, etc. There was always tribalism. There was always dominance. There were warrior nations. Everyone was a warrior nation, and he with the best tech won. Now what's happened is, and leaders got the many women, the polygamy, and then you had all the classes right down to people that didn't exist in the same way. We actually still have that same aggressive domination society. Only the tools have changed and the subtlety have changed, and that's a lot of it is mind programming. They have you believe that you're free when in actual fact the rules show you're not free. They have you believe that the new system is going to give you new freedoms and be better. In some ways, yes, it will. In other ways, you have less freedom than you ever had before there were mobile devices.
Yeah.
I don't want someone who knows wherever I am. I don't want a chip in my hand. I don't want something driven on lithium in my body. It's taking power from my body and reacting to radio frequency waves. It might sound like tin pot fuel. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't profess to know all the science.
It's already happening. They are already chipping kids in certain northern European countries under the guise of safety and control. But in terms of control, one thing I've always been really interested in, there's the full-on conspiracies that gold and silver prices managed and manipulated, and I've always thought that, well, it is to a point, but as you say, it's until they chop off the limb, and maybe the commercial banks are the sacrifice. It's the guys at the top. These corporations, they're going to jump to the next most profitable thing, and some people are leaving the banking industry for the crypto industry, but I think they're going to push silver down until it's more favorable for them to accumulate it all, and maybe JP Morgan are happy with how much they've got now, and they're going to let it run. So do you kind of see that? Do you buy into these theories that it's being suppressed because we need to protect the dollar and everything that comes from that? Or is it something that they can't control because China and Russia are getting in the fold? Or what do you think about the metals and price control, and are they going to do that to Bitcoin?
So the natural nature of markets is that you can hold a distortion as a dominant player for a period, but you can't build a brick wall on the beach against the tide.
Yeah.
The sand stacks out on the back of it, and eventually things get washed away. Yes. You can't keep letting that dam in China have flood rivers build up without eventually having the engineering integrity tested. And if it doesn't make the grade, it fails. So in actual fact, truth, the great thing is distortions and natural senses of balance inevitably win out. And this is why I always say to people, take physical delivery. Yes. If enough people take physical personal delivery, there isn't enough house robberies going on around now that the guys listening to your channel have to worry about people coming into the house. If they're worried about it, dig a hole under your bed and relay the tiles. Do something else. Put in a toilet cistern. Go find where you buried the dog in the back garden and put it under his. There's many ways. Yeah. But take it out the system, then you create a problem for them. Because especially with silver, where there's an industrial use, you've got electric cars that has come out of nowhere. I mean, First Majestic CEO was talking, and you've got a sudden 20% of industrial demand market that's just come out of nowhere with Teslas. You think that's going to stop? They want us all in batteries-driven cars. They want us all in self-driven cars, particularly with Musk and its tracking software that will be running around. And he's a kid from SA that literally went to school a mile down the road from me. Let me tell you, I don't think there's anything good that's coming out of that. But yes, they're convenient. It's a big iPad on wheels and touchy screen, rah-de-rah-de-rah. But believe you me, the tracking and the elements, these will be self-driving. Man, if they decide you've committed a sin, your own car could deliver you to the cop shop
Yes.
now, and you won't have any control over the process. You'll think you're going to buy a liter of milk and bread, and next thing it'll be rooted. I'm not up for that. I don't like draconian. I don't like dominance. I classify myself as a Sigma male. I don't like to be dominated. I'm not an alpha male. I don't seek to dominate others and assert my profile over them. I want to be left the hell alone, and I want to help others attain their freedom where they seek and allow other people to be left alone and respect their right to be left alone. So these elements of government and the control structure are things that I find deplorable personally. Some people are exceedingly blasé until it's perceived they've done something wrong. Until you have real-time banking and they're finding you on the spot and taking the tokens out of your FedCoin wallet as you just speed past a check-in meter. Until you're in that world where they're bailing each other out, we're going towards, in my opinion, a UBI funded, they want dependency. So the best thing, all your listeners, if I can give a message straight to them, my dear Australian friends, fellow Southern Hemispherians, get yourself fiscally independent and try avoid being on the government feed out system, because that dependency is going to slowly have conditions added to it. And if you get dependent on it and you think, I'm making the same money, 60% is coming from the government now, my once big business is now 30, 20%, but I can just pootle along and do a few little idle black market. And now I sit home and watch sport. Bad news, because they're going to start instituting elements to comply to get the full 100% of your UBI payment or your furlong pay or whatever it goes by. And that'll be, have you had your latest COVID-19 vaccine? It's time for your third one this week. Your social score said you're a bit critical of government, so we're only paying you 80% of what we normally give you. We need to see a bit more this, and that. And you're talking about being absolute bully in potential. I'm not saying it can and will happen. I'm not saying it's tomorrow. But the more you are fiscally independent and you're giving value to other private people who are happy to pay you for that value, the longer you can stay out of their rules and dependency for a while. But you might only be buying time, but I'm damned of it. I'm going to do my damnedest to get as much time. And I'm going to arbitrage the system globally. It's quite hard for it to be perfectly synchronized, legal systems all moving in the same direction, because there's lots of idiosyncrasies with each system. So we've got to be prepared to game that. And I've even gone so far. Never let it be said I say you should do anything illegal. But when it comes between choice of family and maintaining your personal independence, gray markets will emerge, because just like you were asking the question about how long can they manipulate silver for, if there's enough people that want something and it's now becoming difficult or not allowed by government, black markets emerge, gray markets emerge, and there are capable people that will be able to do various things. I mean, even if they chip you, they'll probably find some rogue surgeons who will cut them out.
That's where I think
KFC chicken wing and carry that around with you everywhere. And when you want to go without it, you can leave it in your bedside drawer. We've got to fight. We've got to recognize it, and we've got to hold on to that freedom, because otherwise you are industrialized farming cattle.
That's where I think that the financial world has become so much bigger than the real economy. And I think there's going to be a huge rebalance there, from the guy that has a suit and goes up in an elevator and pushes a few keys on a keyboard and earns $1 million a year. He's not productive for the economy. There's the guys out there that are 60-year-old farmers that are doing backbreaking work and haven't made any money for 3 years, and people are running out of food. Something is going to come into a new equilibrium there. But the trading and the investing side of things, I think you have to just at least learn how to do it, because as you say, that is where the haves and the have-nots are going to be. You've got to try and get in the haves, or you're going to fall behind. And once you're behind, it's almost impossible to get back in front. But then there's the other, just education of keeping up with technology. You know, do you know how to use a VPN, or do you know how to buy medication on the black market when the pharmacies are empty, or there's a premium for gold and silver? That's the only way you can sell to get money.
Yeah.
So many things are coming together. People are now buying the old analog phones because they're the ones that don't have a triangulated signal, or you can take the battery out of them. Like you said with the Tesla, old car's going to demand a premium once everything can be controlled and tracked. So I just think that you've got to keep up with the world and be aware of these things. It's all education.
Yeah, on that very comment on cars, I mean, I speak with someone who's very high up in the VW group on the Audi brand, and there's going to be micro payments made. Remember what they want to do. They want to control the money and keep you never from having your own money system. That's why they closed down the guy who tried to do e-gold, and he was fully backed with gold
Yeah.
in the US, and he got put away for quite a while. Then they want to turn you into a tool for rental extraction because it keeps you having to toil and work, and then they can bleed off income. So this is why products like Microsoft gone from you used to buy Word and Excel into now you rent it and you pay. So it's always rental is the rental extraction is the big thing. So it's tax. The government's tax is actually rental extraction. You have to find a way to pay the least unnecessary rent for the lifestyle that you choose to live. And in all of that, what they're looking at doing is the car makers to scale will actually build just one full spec model with all the tricks. And you can actually buy the vehicle and the frame and most of the car, but if you don't pay for the overpriced extras, let's say, the aircon and the seat warmers and all of this and the radio and all of that, you'll have the car and all those other components within that don't belong to you. So every time you turn them on and actually utilize them, you'll pay a tick through crypto token rental on the utilization of the radio and the aircon on that day. So they want to get annuitized income, and they don't want to have to build so many model variants with specs and changing and all of this.
Have you
So
seen
it's
have you seen
fading out.
have you seen what's happening in the Australian property market? The bubble's kind of popped and transactions are really low because of COVID.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest incomes for particularly the state governments, it was responsible for the majority of their income in most states. That's really dropped off a cliff. And now they're talking about the yearly land tax and property tax rather than the stamp duty at time of transaction. Yeah.
I noticed you got someone I was a big fan on, Robert Kiyosaki, on, and he was, the cash flow model of property. And now I notice he's very emphasizing precious metals and Bitcoin and much less that. And I absolutely agree. I think the small player, the herd, being part of landlord class is not going to be tolerated. And land taxes and wealth distribution based on a fixed asset that you can't put in your pocket and move around with is where they're absolutely going to come with you. So I'm not the guy saying go buy a whole bunch of rental properties. I also think in this UBI environment, you can't throw out, we're getting more Bolshevism, which is an aggressive communism that led to a huge amount of Christian white murdered in the huge Russian, later to become USSR state during 1917. I hope that we don't have a rerun, but it's driven by a similar kind of thinking and quality of people. In fact, Antifa actually is historically an anti-Nazi. It was actually pro-commie that existed in Germany that Hitler went out after, because he was actually trying to keep communists out of Germany and restore order and some sort of family values in Berlin that had actually become sort of all sorts of gay, queer porn hubs and various other things.
I think a big curveball that COVID has thrown at the elite at the moment is this idea of cities and structures, and the wealthy live near and you build up. And now we're starting to see almost a premium. People want to live in Tasmania in the bush with no neighbours, with no COVID. They want their own veggie garden, as long as they've got fresh air, water, food, and they've got their good internet. You can sit at home and watch your Netflix, and rather than being in the city. So I think that's
Exactly.
really changing things, and working from home and all that, and it builds into, I guess, decentralization and Ethereum and that side of things to some degree as well.
Spot on. The home working that's a trend that's going to go absolutely furious. I mean, we worked from an amazing luxury villa for what ended up lockdown months, was planned to be 6, was 9 months. Huge development. I mean, there's deer and everything, no pets allowed because there's so much natural game. I had owls on my roof and monkeys stealing bananas out of our house. Really nice, beautiful. And I actually was interested in purchasing, and I spoke to the agents, and they were rocking because you had the rest of South Africa all getting out of their homes and the commute and buying the top end in this northern, on the coast, on the beach, private beach, restaurants, hotels in the place, but all very much embedded in the indigenous nature. They're all going out there to live because you have, 200 megabits. It's not, or is it giga? Probably 200 gigs. Sorry, internet speed. It's actually probably faster than where I am here, without being the fastest. You can do all your trading from there. You live in a beautiful, villa with a room flow pool, and you don't have to drive. That's the lifestyle trader. So we were on trend early. I even stopped doing physical events for my theory weekend. We recorded everything to a high intent. We've been preparing for this, that it's going to become harder, that you actually have to be able to work from home and have an internet lifestyle business. And that's exactly what I've done, both through my trading and actually through serving other people. And we have guys from everywhere. We've got Kiwis, a lot of Australians, as I've already mentioned, but they actually go right the way from Hong Kong, Japan, right the way to West Coast, the States. And Latin America, a few English speakers in there, and all points in between. So that's amazing. We can serve 24-hour market. That's the businesses that your listeners and viewers should be looking to develop. Brick and mortar businesses with the nonsense that's going down, that's old school world, and that's definitely something that I suggest most people retool and do. An online community. Unfortunately, we're going to have more virtual relationships and less physical ones, and that's a pity, but I think you have to accept that.
100%. And there's one project, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Decentraland. They're doing all the virtual meetings and virtual, I'm really bullish on that type of thing. But we've got about 15 minutes left, and then I've got to go to this next meeting, Francis. So I do want to sort of get your thoughts on, you said before that you do think the market crash or correction is coming, and why can't they prop this up and print $1 trillion a week for the next year, and those sort of questions that people want to know. Is it coming to an end, or can they continue just this fudge of markets grinding higher to try and keep everyone happy and wealthy?
I'm not sure which market you're referring to that I think will crash. Generally, I think the oligarchical, which I consider as part of the control structure, companies like Apple, I think you'll see 10 trillion Apple. Okay. But it'll say less about Apple than it'll say about the proliferation of fiat.
Yes.
So I think shorting indices of oligarchical control companies, you've got BlackRock, you've got that are actually negotiating for the government, the Argentinian renegotiation of their debt default. So now you've got a private company supposedly doing something for government money that was taxpayers' money. It's most ridiculous. So the whole notion of private and government, this has been totally blurred. These oligarchical megacorps, Amazon and Apple, are government, and they're part of the spying network, and they're spying on you. And they're doing things for government. They host the military-industrial complex. So, I don't think they're going to crash, but they're hyper overvalued. But I just think the proliferation of fiat will mask that. That doesn't mean they won't have regular spikes down. But I'm not a fan for shorting equities. In fact, equities and indices is one of the trickiest ones. There will be occasional collapses. We are a bit peaky right now. In fact, I think Apple's not far off 2 trillion as it stands. But I think that's the least interesting game. We're going to have FX failure, because part of what Brent Johnson does of the dollar milkshake, I think he's accurate on, is the need for that debt that has been raised in those emerging nations to disappear. And they're not going to be able to pay it. So we're having the likes of the lira at the moment, which is one of my major favorites. You can go long it now. They reduced they increased the margin, reduced the leverage a little bit, and that's a sign of the stress. So they don't want you to make the money; the banks want to make the money. So I think FX emergings, precious metals, and cryptos are actually the greatest game. You can be a future tech spotter, and I generally prefer to be long, shorting the index. Even though it's getting a lot narrower, that's your advanced decline line, many of the old world companies are lagging, actually pretty poor. If you strip out the likes of Netflix, Apple, Google, Alphabet, et cetera, it's not a shorting market. It's quite a benign market. The overvaluation is coming in essentially the Bolshevik controlled part of control structure megacorps. And they are your enemy. Try not support them unnecessarily, in my view. Try support local business. Everyone should be doing the following: getting local, your local farmer, your local mate, joining a shotgun club if arms are difficult to become part of, and you have a fairly dense area. I prefer to be out. I like isolation and lots of space. I'm not going to have a Black Lives Matter riot outside my front door. They've got to come a long way for one house in the middle of nowhere land. It's not going to happen. So I don't want, I'm suggesting that. They don't actually want that to happen. They want to pile us high in urbanized areas. There's various agendas that have been done. And I study that element. It's a little bit reset, and it goes right into conspiratorial material in terms of how they want to have high density zones of where we are. It's kind of like you've had too much free range grazing. You need to be put in a field close to the abattoir. The rest is left open nature. That this is very clear in the States that there's various agendas. So I want to do the opposite. If they go down on Monero, be up on Monero. Remember, you want to have your privacy. They are going to get some bits of information, but don't make it easy for them. If you're not that interesting, I don't run guns, I don't sell drugs, I'm not doing anything illegal, but I don't trust government inside that. And I don't think it's a coincidence that various agendas across various distant countries are being advanced. We don't have individualistic government. They're all complying to similar agendas. And just look where the debt situation is globally. Where's the frugal? Where's Mr. Frugal Nation that hasn't raised insane amounts of debt? Doesn't exist. Everyone has been forced to snort the same line of cocaine. And now everyone's a crackhead. We're all lepers in a leper colony. It's designed to be a synchronized all fall down. This is the key thing. So there are transnational, powerful forces that don't allow politicians to get into space, that don't dance to the overall tune. And this is why, as I say, you can't look at the facts and say, it's kind of funny. Some of us like meat, some of us like fish, some of us do this. But in the global world, there's no individuality at all. We're all debt over debt. Well, those currencies are built to fail now. They're set up to fail. So you should be planning for failure currency. You mentioned your property market. Don't forget how much they've been killing the Aussie dollar to try keep.
We'll see if Francis joins back here.
Something that has been part and parcel of your reset in Australia for having a double cycle property boom. So I don't know if you have a comment on that, and I hope I didn't lose you there.
You just cut out for a little bit, but you're talking about the Aussie dollar, and I completely agree. I mean, we've covered on the channel. It's gone from $1.10 at the peak of the mining boom down to, was it 55 cents or 60? I think it was 55. It was. But at that day when there was blood in the streets, our inbox had lit up with how do I buy US dollars? And I'd had to do a video saying, guys, this is what a capitulation looks like. There's probably a bounce coming when all you guys have decided it's time to buy US dollars and sell Aussie dollars. But I think long term, Australia's going to fall into that category of the Turkish lira and everyone else. Oh, you just cut out again, Francis. Don't you? Back?
Yeah, I'm back here. I'm back, and I got you. Yeah, well, that was your property price halvening, even if you just stayed there in nominal levels. And the reason the central bank chooses to do that is they tax all of you by making your buying power of your Aussie half what it used to be, so that the mark-to-market value of the property on the banks mean the banks are not bankrupt. So in essence, you once again bailed in your banks because they've said, solidarity, chaps, we've got to all take this one on the chin. Your 10 Aussie dollars in your wallet now buys you what 5 Aussies used to do if you have to buy something from America or from anywhere else because your currency's lost so much value. So you have paid.
It's so funny you say that. I did a tweet framing that and giving it context and saying, if you're a global investor and you're looking to increase your purchasing power in US dollars to buy more of the S&P 500 or a holiday home over in the US or something, even if you've been in Aussie property, you've not made any money. You are not in front. And I got torn to shreds and people telling me I'm wrong and this, that, and the other, but they don't understand that notion of it's priced in Aussie dollars. Yeah.
It's the benchmark. You see, everybody has accepted the shell game as the currency is your benchmark. And I'm saying it's time to talk about new benchmarks because they've got you in a proliferation game where they keep devaluing you and you have to keep running on this treadmill that's going ever faster, and there's going to be a melt up in this.
Well, and that's why it's no clearer than, you've covered this at length as well. It is no clearer than the Aussie dollar gold chart that's nearly at $3,000 an ounce.
Exactly. Yeah, an excellent benchmark, and similar, and silver will be an outlier runner on top of gold because we've got the one final point, because I know we've only got a little bit more time. One of the key elements about this, why I'm particularly silver bullish, is apart from that industrial usage, which is climbing on the battery and a number of themes, never mind solar panels, etc., etc. And everyone should, on a separate note, have some colloidal silver, which is a great antibacterial if you ever have to do some medical at home. But the whole point is the gold-silver ratio shot up to 128 on one of mine and about 126.6 if I divide the two futures charts by each other.
Yeah.
And we called at 113 the first setup on a small time frame reversal. And we said, now you want to go from gold overweight to silver overweight. That ratio has fallen to the 70s. That's actually half of a trip that I expect will take us well past the 30s low of 2011. And I say to many people that was actually a truncated short bull. It never had the full run. The last significant bull that had a full run went up to 102 gold-silver ratio and collapsed down to 16.5. And I expect our current circumstances as this global leper colony where we've all got to all fall down together in this.
Oh, we'll give Francis a minute to come back. That's one of the interesting things as well about silver is
128
back.
Issued. I don't.
Oh, I've lost him. One of the interesting things about silver that Francis sort of touched on then was the colloidal silver, but actually elemental silver is naturally antibacterial and antiviral. So a lot of the surgeons in the hospitals may start to have all their instruments made out of silver, which is very interesting. Sorry, Francis. I think you're back. While you were gone, I was just telling the guys that silver's naturally antibacterial and antiviral, and I think you're going to see a push to have all silver instruments in hospitals and doorknobs and everything. So just another component there. And one little trade we did was when the paper price got down so low, we said take advantage of this, as you mentioned before, and the spread between the physical bullion and the ETF was a fantastic trade that we executed, and the followers end up getting to buy 50% more physical silver. Now that spread sort of narrowed a little bit. So guys, that's just a good example of using those games to your advantage. But any final messages for people, Francis, in the last few minutes?
Yeah, just saying that gold-silver ratio, in my view, will surpass the lows of the gold-silver ratio that occurred in the 80s. The late 70s to the 80s, which was 16.5, in my best guess on balance of probabilities, which was 16.5. We only made a 31 in what was a truncated bull, wasn't allowed to run its full way through in 2011. And so it's one of my favorite trades, and I'll continue to trade along despite this pullback, because it's pulled back exactly where we expected it to do on the gold versus the euro and the gold pound, where we had macro top technical charts. When you want to trade something, the key part is a trading element, and this is what we specialize in. And the guys are welcome to book in for a chat. There's no obligation, and they'll talk to other traders, not salespeople. The key element is, when do I buy? Where's my stop, so I know how much to size so that I don't get killed if I'm wrong, because you will be inaccurate. And where do I take off? And is the juice of that reward worth the squeeze for the risk that I'm taking? And if you can master that, and you have the understanding of the three pots that I brought forward to you and timeframes, you're off to a ripper. And you can be in a community with people of like-minded, which we'd be happy to have. We can have a chat about that, and I'd be delighted to have them. And I'm a big fan of your channel, and I would love to see what I can do to support your guys, because I think in some weird ways, South Africa and Australia are very different, but they also have some very similar, great similarities. And there is an entrepreneurial class. There's a tendency, a little bit more frontier spirit there. And I really want to see the guys make out and come out good out of this, because it is going to be one of the most polarizing events that has ever happened in economic and probably socio-political history. And we are living through it. That's not to be a drama queen. We are living through this. There's big orchestrated moves coming across planet. And you have to position well, and you've got to have means to come out of this well. That doesn't guarantee you a good existence, depending how draconian our governments go. But this is a polarizing event. People need to take action. They need to be in your premium group, being wise to what's going on in the crypto, and they need to understand how to trade markets with charts. And that's where we come in. And that sounds salesy, and I absolutely apologize, but that's my standpoint. That's why I'm positioned here. Most of what I think is coming, and it's actually had a staircase escalation with a CV19. And we're actually seeing things moving. You want to trade reset? This is where you need to be. along with Alex Saunders and myself. And on that note, thank you very much for having me on your awesome show.
It's been a pleasure, Francis. And if you guys want to see a part 2, I'm sure there's so much we could keep going on. We didn't even get into all the UFO revelations that they've tried to creep into the media lately as well. But I'll link all Francis's stuff down below, and I think we'll probably end up doing a part 2 because there's so much to cover. But thanks for joining us today, mate.
Absolutely. Goodbye to you all.
Cheers, guys.